Okay, Rabbi, let's get going. We are on DAF Yud Dalid, or actually, Yud Dalid Amud Aleph. Yesterday, you should have gotten down to you've done the Mishnah. The Mishnah, the theme of this last Mishnah that we learned is in contrast to the prior Mishnah, which says that there are certain periods of time when you cannot engage commercially with idolaters. This Mishnah is telling me that regardless of time, there are certain products that you're never allowed to sell to an idolater because the presumption is that he's going to be using those products for Avodah Zara. So, don't sell them at Salem, right? That's like a perfect example, right? But that's actually a whole shaila. Can you, if you're a jeweler, can you sell at Salem, right?
What's Salem?
Crucifix.
Oh.
Okay. Anyway, but we're not even going to get into the halachic discussion whether Christianity is idolatry or not. That's a very, very lengthy discussion, which is not germane to our topic at now. But we're going to assume that we're not going to make any assumptions. Anyway, let's go to our Mishnah. The Mishnah says that there are certain products. So some of them we don't know what they are. Itztroblin and Beno Shuach, Patotros and Lavona and Tarnagol Halava. So some of them we're familiar with the words and some of them we're not. So we're going to go through them. So the first one is called Itztroblin. So the question is, Ma Itztroblin? And the Gemara answers Tornisa. And there's a machlokus between Rashi and Tosfos as to what the definition of the word Tornisa is. Rashi says that it means cedar wood, the wood from a cedar tree, which the belief was that was going to be used for Avodah Zara. And Tosfos says it's gofris, it's brimstone, which might have been used in the idolatrous pyres that they would have in their shrines. So the Gemara says, I'm unhappy with that definition of Itzroblin because Uriminhu, Hosifu alehen al chasen v'itzroblin mochsasin b'no shuach. This brisa is talking about rabbinic bans on Shemitah because these are considered to be produce items that are also forbidden and have the holiness of Shavias, of Shemitah, applied to them. And one of them is called Itztroblin. V'isal kadaitach Itztroblin tornisa mi isa b'shvias. And if you're going to assume that Itztroblin is defined as tornisa, whether it's cedar wood or brimstone, how is that subject to the laws of Shemitah? V'hatanya zeha klal, kol sheyesh lo ikar yesh lo shvias, v'chol she'en lo ikar ein lo shvias. The general rule is that anything that nurtures from the ground and has a perennial root is subject to the laws of Shemitah, but anything that does not nurture from the ground is not subject to the laws of Shemitah on a perennial basis. So therefore, it seems certainly brimstone, which is inorganic, does not nurture from the ground. And the question is, how does Rashi understand cedar wood? That's Tosfos' question. He's not really sure how Rashi understands, because cedar wood does nurture from the ground, unless you say that once it's detached from the ground, it doesn't nurture anymore from the ground. But the point is that it can't be defined either like Rashi or Tosfos. That's the Gemara says. Ela Amar of Safra Peri da Arza v'chenki Rabban Amar Abelazar Peri da Arza. But rather, what it means is the fruit from the cedar tree. Now, cedar trees don't grow fruit. It's a non-fruit-bearing tree, so it could be an acorn. It could be a cone from I don't know what kind of acorn a cedar tree has.
You say it was a cone like a pine cones.
It could be like a pine cone, right? Now, and Rashi explains they would hang them as decorations in front of their idolatries. Just imagine like mistletoe or other, what do they call them, the decorations on the Christmas tree. All of these things have pagan origins, right? What do they call them?
Tinsel.
Tinsel. There you go. Mark, I didn't know you were such a bucky. Okay, thank you.
They suggest in here that you have statues of pagan gods with a staff, and on the top of the staff is the cone.
Very nice. Okay. Beno Shuach. The next thing on the list was called Beno Shuach. So what is that? So Amar Rabba Bar Barchana, Amar Rabbi Yechanan Te'eni Chivarata. It is white figs. Special white fig was used for idolatrous practice. Upatotros. The next item on the list also is a word that we don't understand what it is. Amar Rabba Bar Barchana, Amar Rabbi Yechanan B'patotro Tehen Shanu. And he explains, it's not a third item. There are two products, and then patotros means to modify the definition of those two items. One was the pine cone, and the other one was the white fig. And the Mishnah is saying with the word patotros that that's only forbidden to sell to them when they come complete with the stem. But if they are stemless, you're allowed to sell it to them, because for the idolatrous purposes, they will only buy it with the stem. If it's without a stem, it's no longer useful to them. Okay, and then the assumption, therefore, is that they're buying it for some other use, which is perfectly fine. Levona, frankincense. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Levona Zaka. We're not banning all frankincense. We're only banning a special white frankincense, which is a very fine kind, or not white. Zaka means pure. In other words, it's got to be a certain brand of frankincense that is extremely refined, and only that is forbidden. Tana, umikulan mochin lehen chavila. There's a brisa that also qualifies the Mishnah and says that if you're selling it to them in bulk, then it's permitted. In other words, if you're selling a guy a bulk item of frankincense or pine cones, then the assumption is that he's a wholesaler. He's not, he's a retailer. He's not himself going to be using it for idolatry. He's going to sell it to other people. And therefore it's perfectly fine. The kama chavila, how much is that bulk? Piresh Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira in chavila pchusa mishlosha manas. It has to be at least an amount of 3 manas to be considered a bulk shipment. And if it's that much, then you're allowed to sell it to an oved avodah zara. V'leichosh dilma azelu mazbin lachrini umakatri. But the Gemara says, but why aren't you worried? Maybe as a retailer, he's going to sell it to another idolater who's going to use it for avodah zara. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi, and this is a very important principle, alifne mefakdinan, alifne delifne lo mefakdinan. The Gemara says as follows. We have an obligation not to place a stumbling block before a non-Jew. Just as much as we have an obligation to not cause a Jew to sin, we're not allowed to cause a Gentile to sin. But there's no prohibition to give something to one Gentile A who will then cause Gentile B to sin. That's not forbidden. It may be forbidden rabbinically to do that for a Jew. Like if I know that by selling something to Jew A, he may cause another Jew to stumble and sin, that I may have a rabbinical obligation to not do. But that does not extend to my Gentile counterpart. And therefore, there's nothing wrong with selling a bulk shipment to a guy who's going to resell it. And even if he resells it for avodah zara, it's not my problem anymore. Okay, the tarnagol lavan. Then another item that the Mishnah had said you cannot sell to an idolater is a white chicken. Why white chickens? Because they used white chickens in certain idolatrous practices that were known in the times of the Gemara. Now, Rabbi Yehuda had disagreed, and Rabbi Yehuda had qualified it in the Mishnah, and he had said, well, it depends. If you're just selling them white chickens, I agree that it's forbidden. But if you're selling them a whole, what do you call a
Flock.
Group of chickens?
Flock.
A flock? Is it flock?
Yeah, birds, flock of birds.
I thought it was like a gaggle or
Gaggle of geese.
A gaggle of geese?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know, whatever you call a group of chickens. A chicken something. Right? If you sell a group of chickens, and within that group are white chickens, then it's okay. That's according to Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, now, and then another thing that the Mishnah had said is that if you clip one of the toes of the white chicken, you're also allowed to sell it because they will only use an unblemished chicken for idolatry. Okay, so now let's take a look. Amar Reb Yonah, Amar Reb Zera, Amar Reb Zvid, Vika Damasni, Amar Reb Yonah, Amar Reb Zera, Tarnagola mi, mutter limkar lo tarnagol lavan. But tarnagol lavan lami, asa limkar lo tarnagol lavan. So Reb Yonah quotes a very important qualification to our Mishnah. It all depends on how the idolater is soliciting the purchase of that chicken. If he goes to the marketplace and says, does anyone have any chickens to sell? Then you're allowed to sell him even a white chicken. It's only if he says, does anyone have any white chickens for sale, that you're not allowed to sell him a white chicken. Because he specified that he dafka wants a white chicken, that's an indicator that he's intending to use it for avodah zara. But if he says, I need chickens, then it could be he's using it because he needs chicken soup, whatever, right? So Tanan, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mocher Hulo Tarnagolavin Bein Tarnagolin. So the Gemara says, now wait a minute. Let's look at the Mishnah for a second. What did Rabbi Yehuda say? He said you're allowed to sell white chickens as long as it's part of a larger group of multicolored chickens. So Heichi Dami. So what's the case? Ilay Medikomer Tarnagolavin Lami, Tarnagolavin Lami, Afilu Bein Tarnagolin Nami Lo. I don't understand Rabbi Yehuda. If the guy explicitly is requesting white chickens, then even if you sell him a group of multicolored chickens with white in them, it should also be usher because he's clearly indicating that he wants it for avodah zara. So elalav de ka'amar tarnagolami tarnagolami va'afilu hachila Rabbi Yehuda beinar tarnagolim in bifnei atzma lo. So we must conclude that Rabbi Yehuda is addressing a case where the guy just said, I want to buy chickens without specifying the color. And then Rabbi Yehuda says, you're only allowed to sell him white chickens as long as it's part of other colors. And what does that imply? Therefore, ulatanakama afilu ben atarnagolim namilo. And according to the Chachamim, the Tanakama, even selling multiple colors of chickens, you can't sell him a white chicken. And that's, and the implication is, even if he doesn't specify that he wants to buy white chickens. So it's a kasha on Rabbi Yonah and all of the sages that he's quoting, because Rabbi Yonah, according to Rabbi Yonah, if he says, I just want chickens without specifying the color, it's perfectly okay. So we have a kasha on that. So Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak hacha b'may haskinan kagon da'amar zeh vazeh. No, he says, what we're talking about in our Mishnah, really if a guy says, I want to buy white chickens, so then you can't. If he says, I want to buy chickens without specifying any color, then it's perfectly okay. But the Mishnah is addressing a case where he says neither of those things. He says, I want to buy, who's got white and black and red chickens? What's black and white and red all over, right? He wants chickens. He wants black chickens, he wants white chickens, he wants red chickens. And he specifies that, right? He says, I want black, white, and red. So there, now we have a question. Right, so the Tanakama is of the opinion, wait a minute, too much information. Why did you say colors? Why did you specify colors? So maybe you want white for idolatry, and the red and the black is a diversionary tactic that the guy is using to throw us off his trail. Because he knows that Jews don't want to sell white chickens dafka to the idolaters, so he says, I want to buy white, black, and red. That's the Tanakama's opinion. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no. As long as he's willing to lay out cash for the red and the black ones, then that's okay. No one's going to, even an idolater is not going to throw away money. So therefore, you can assume that he wants the chickens for food or for some other purpose, but not for the purpose of idolatry. If he's willing to buy the black and red ones as well, you can throw in the white ones too. So therefore, we have three different categories. When he says, I want chickens, fine. You can even sell him just white chickens. When he says, I want white chickens, you can't sell him anything at all, and everyone agrees to that. But when he says, I want white, black, and red chickens, so then there's a machlokus, the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. Tanakama says, don't sell him anything. And Rabbi Yehuda says, as long as he's willing to buy all of them, it's fine. Tanya nami hachi, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Emas abizman shomer tarnagol zelava. Avalim Amar zeva zeh mutter. So the Brisa seems to support that. Rabbi Yehuda says, when is there a prohibition of selling him white chickens? When he specifies, I want to buy a white chicken. But if he says, I want to buy white, black, and red, then it's okay. Va'afilu omer tarnagol zeh, obe kochavim shasamisha livno shayilo chola b'soch beiso mutar. And then the Brisa says something else, which we're going to analyze in a moment. That even if he specifies and he says, I would like that chicken, and he points to a white chicken, it's still okay to sell it to him as long as you know, based on his circumstances, that he's not going to use it for avodah zara. What are the two examples? If you know that he's making a big feast, or if you know that he's got someone sick in his house that he needs to make chicken soup for. See, chicken soup was an elixir even back in the times of the Gemara. Right? So if in both of those cases, if you know based on his circumstances that he's not going to use it for avodah zara, then you can even sell him a white chicken, even though he said, he specified he wants that white chicken over there. So the Gemara says, now wait a minute. V'hatznan obi kochavim shasam mishra livno eno aser ela osa hayom v'osa hayom bilvad v'osa ha'ish bilvad osa hayom v'osa ish miha aser. But wait a minute, didn't we learn previously in the Mishnah that if an Oved Avodah Zara is making a wedding feast for his son, you're not allowed to engage commercially with him because we know he's going to thank his Avodah Zara in the course of buying product from you. So how can the Brisa say that it's okay to sell him a chicken for making a feast for a wedding feast? So the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Misharshia betavazig tanan, betavazig, period. The answer is that the Brisa which permits you to sell chicken to him for a feast is not a wedding feast, it's tam a party. It's a social event. A social event he is this completely secular concept, and therefore he's not going to go and praise his Avodah Zarah, and therefore you can sell him a chicken. Now, Tanan, Ushar kol advarim staman mutter pirushan aser. So we're still not totally satisfied because there's one other line in the Mishnah that's going to be problematic, according to what Rabbi Yonah says. It says towards the end of our Mishnah that any other product other than the ones that we've mentioned above, you're allowed to sell to the idolater if he says stam, meaning that he doesn't specify that it's for Avodah Zarah. But if he specifies that he wants to buy it for Avodah Zarah, then even a non-normative product that's not normally used for Avodah Zarah, if he says it's for his Avodah Zarah, you're not allowed to sell. So my stamanu, my pirushin. So now the question is, what do those words mean if he asks for it generically versus if he specifies? So ilay mastamet dekamar chiti chivarta pirushan dekamar lavodas kochavim. If you're going to tell me the way I would normally read it, which is a guy wants to buy white wheat, and he says, I just want to buy white wheat. Now, white wheat is not normally used for Avodah Zarah, so therefore it's perfectly innocent, and therefore you can sell it to him. But if he specifies, says, I'd like some white wheat for my church, so then that's where it will be usher. Is that what the Mishnah means? Well, lo staman srich lameimar dimizavninan, velo pirushan srich lameimar delomizavninan. Well, then what do you need the Mishnah to say that? Isn't that overstating the obvious? It's pasha. If there's a commodity that an idolater comes in, he doesn't specify if it's for Avodah Zarah, why would I think that you can't sell it to him? And if he specifies that it's for Avodah Zarah, why would I think that it's okay? Like, what do I need the Mishnah to tell me that? So, elastaman dekamar chiti, pirushan dekamar chivarta. So you have to conclude that like this, that stam is where he says, I just want to buy wheat generically. And when he specifies, it means he wants to buy a special kind of wheat, like a white kind of wheat. And there's says the Gemara, maybe there's suspicion over there that because he's asking for a special brand or a special quality of wheat, he plans to use it for idolatrous purposes. Well, if that's how you learn the Mishnah, which seems to be the way you're supposed to learn, Michlal de Tarnagol afilu stama nami lo, then what makes a chicken any different? If a guy asks for a white chicken, then it's no different for asking for white wheat. That's for sure usher. But a white chicken is even more usher than other products. So therefore, we must assume that even if he asks for chicken stam, without specifying white, you're not allowed to sell him a white chicken. That's what the Mishnah seems to mean. And if so, it's a kasha on Rabbi Yonah, who quoted his Rabbeim as saying that as long as he doesn't specify a white chicken, you're allowed to sell him, as long as he doesn't specify. So it's a kasha on Rabbi Yonah. So Amri la'olam stamen dekamar chiti chivarta pirushan dekamar lavodas kochavim. So the Gemara says, no, you didn't understand that line in the Mishnah. Really, when the Mishnah says stam versus generically versus explicit, explicating, the difference is stam means generically he asks for white wheat. He asks for white wheat because white wheat is totally innocent. It's not associated with idolatry. But if he says, I want it for my church, for my Avodah Zarah, so then we assume that it's for Avodah Zarah and therefore it's usher. Your question was, well, why then do you need to say it? It's so obvious. It's such an interesting psychology, the Gemara says. Why did I have to specify that if a guy says, I would like some white wheat for my Avodah Zarah, that it's usher to sell it to him? Isn't that obvious that you can't sell to him? No, it's not obvious. I'll tell you why. Because maybe the guy is not serious that he means it for Avodah Zarah. Maybe he's one of those guys that he every Sunday, instead of going to church, he goes to the bar and he drinks and he watches the ball game, and he's totally not involved with the church at all. But he knows that there are plenty of people who sell merchandise that are very religious, and he wants to be able to curry favor with those people and get the best price. So if he goes to the seller on Monday and he says, "Good morning, Brother John. It was so nice to see you in the front pews in the church the other day. I would like to buy some white wheat for the church as well, because I'm such a devout idolater as you are." His thinking is that he's going to be able to get a better price and be able to get John, this merchant, to sell it to him, because he's masquerading as a devout idolater. And that's the reason why maybe he says he wants it for Avodah Zarah. He's not really being serious. He's doing it for deceptive purposes. And therefore you might think that if he goes to a Jew and says that, maybe the Jew is allowed to sell him because he's not being taken, he's not really serious. So that's the chiddush of the Mishnah, is that even though maybe he's doing it only to curry favor, nevertheless, it's still usher to sell to him. So the conclusion of the Gemara is that we're going to stick with Rabbi Yonah, that if he says, "Stam, a chicken I would like to buy," you're allowed to sell him a white chicken. It's only if he specifies white chicken that you can't sell him the white chicken. Okay. Boy Ravashi. Tarnagol lavan katua lami, mahu limkar lo tarnagol lavan shalom. Mi amrinan mitikamer katua lav lavodas kolchavim kaboyel, dilma iarumi kamarim. Here's another shiloh that Ravashi has. Okay, if you're worried about the deceptiveness of the idolater purchaser, so here's another question. What if an idolater comes to market and he says, "Can anyone sell me a white chicken that is handicapped? A handicapped white chicken?" So the question is are you allowed to sell him a non-handicapped white chicken? Because since he requested a white chicken, but on the other hand he said he doesn't mind if it's handicapped, that shows it's not for idolatry. Or maybe he's trying to throw you off his trail. Maybe he's saying, "I'd like a white chicken, but it's okay if it's handicapped, so that you shouldn't think it's for Avodah Zarah, so that you'll sell it to him." And therefore you cannot. And therefore he's being an oiber chacham, and therefore you cannot sell him a whole chicken, a whole white, a healthy white chicken, because maybe he'll use it for Avodah Zarah. And imtim salomer hayi arume hadekamarim. And if you're going to say that we have to worry about deceptiveness in that case, tarnagol lavin lami, v'yavile shachar v'shakol, v'yavile adam v'shakol, ma'u limkar lo lavan. Mi amrinan kivin diyavu shachar v'shakal, adam v'shakal, lav lavodas kolchavim kaboi, o dilma yirumi kamarim. So here's another question. What if a guy comes to market and he says, "I'd like to buy a white chicken," and the merchant says, "Well, I don't have, here, take a black chicken," and he buys it. And then he keeps going, "I'd like to buy a white chicken." The guy says, "Here's a red chicken," and he buys it. Can I then sell him a white chicken? Because he's indicated that he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the color of the chicken. Or maybe he's only buying the black and red chicken to throw you off his trail. He wants to pretend that he doesn't need it for Avodah Zarah, and that's why he's buying the black and the red. And the Gemara here on both of those shilas says, take. We're not really sure. Rabbi Meir Omer, af dekel v'chule. Rabbi Meir had added certain other products that you're not allowed to sell. And the first thing that Rabbi Meir had said was, af dekel tav. A good palm tree you cannot sell to him. So, and as the Gemara is explaining, the palm tree, when you sell someone a tree, it's still growing from the ground. So, Amarle Rav Chisda Lavimi Gemiri, Davodas Kochavim Davram Avinu Dalad Meya Pirkei Havyan, Va'ana Chamishatnan Velo Yadinan Maika Amrinan. So Rav Chisda was lamenting to show Nebuch how ignorant we are compared to earlier generations. We have a tradition that Avraham Avinu's Maseches Avodah Zarah, when he would learn Maseches Avodah Zarah, he had 400 chapters because there was so much he needed to know about Avodah Zarah. I mean, he literally had the Sears catalog of Avodah Zarah. It's like everything was in there because that's the world in which he lived. His father was the family business. His father had all these Avodah Zarahs, right? So, Avraham Avinu was well versed in Avodah Zarah. And Rav Chisda says, Nebuch, look at us today. We only have 5 chapters of Maseches Avodah Zara, and we still don't understand the whole thing. So the question is, Umay Kashya, what part did he not understand? The Ketani Rabbi Meir Omer Af Dekel Tav Chetzev V'Niklas Asr Limkor La'ovdei Kochavim. Because Rabbi Meir had added, in addition, there is other products, a Dekel Tav, a good palm, a Chetzev and a Niklas, you're not allowed to sell to an Ovdei Kochavim. So my problem is, says Rav Chisda, Dekel Tavu Delo Mezavninon HaDekel Bish Mezavninon. So what does that mean? You cannot sell them a good quality palm, but you can sell them a bad quality palm? Oh, it's not a mochen lahem b'mechuber lakar. We're going to learn later on that you're not allowed to sell a non-Jew real estate in Eretz Yisrael, which includes selling them a tree. And that's because of a separate prohibition of lo sechane, that you're not allowed to give a chaniya bekarka. You cannot give any foothold in the land of Eretz Yisrael. You cannot sell that or give that away to a Gentile. So why are you making a distinction between a good palm and a bad palm? All palms you shouldn't be allowed to sell to a non-Jew. So Amar Lei, my dekel tav, Peros dekel tav. So the answer to Rav Chisda's question is, it doesn't mean selling him the tree, it means selling him the produce of the tree, the dates of the palm. So you cannot, according to Rav Meir, you cannot sell the dates of a good quality palm tree, but you can sell him the dates of a bad quality palm tree. V'chein amar Rav Huna Peros dekel tav. And that's what Rav Huna said as well. Next, chetzev. What does the word chetzev mean? So the Gemara explains kisba. It's a certain kind of quality dates. You cannot sell to the goy. Again, the idolater, because the assumption is, according to Rav Meir, he's going to use it for idolatry. And niklas, what is this word niklas? And in the Mishnah, the girsa was niklav. What does it mean? Ki asa ravdimi amar Rabbi Chama bar Yosef kuraiti. It means kuraiti. So Abaye basically says, Shkoyach, amar le Abaye le ravdimi, tanan niklas v'lo yadinan ma'u, v'at amart kuraiti v'lo yadinan ma'u, v'lo yadinan. Maya hanislan. He says, we have a word in the Mishnah that is niklas. We have no idea what it means. So you told us it means kuraiti. We have no idea what that means either. So what have you done for us? You've given us one word which means nothing, and another word that means nothing. So Amar le ahanai l'chu dichi aslas hasam amart lehu niklas v'lo yadi amart lehu kuraiti v'yadi v'kamach bulach. I says, no, I have benefited you, even though you may not. We may not know the definition of either of them, but I know that in Eretz Yisrael they know the definition of the word kuraiti, because it's a more modern word, and you're likely to find someone in Eretz Yisrael that can actually show it to you. So niklas, granted, even in Eretz Yisrael, it's an ancient word, they don't know what it means anymore. But if you go to Eretz Yisrael and you ask one of the natives, do you know what the word kuraiti is? And he'll say, of course, let me show you what a kuraiti fruit is. And he'll show it to you, and therefore you're all set. But it's some kind of produce item, Rashi says. We don't know exactly what it is. Next Mishnah, Makam shenagu limkor behemadaka lo'ovdei kuchavim mochrin, Makam shenagu shlo limkor ein mochrin. So the Mishnah now says that it depends on the minhag makam. If the minhag is to sell small animals, what we mean by small animals is small farm animals like goats and sheep, to idolaters, you're allowed to sell to them. But if the minhag is not to sell to them, then you cannot sell to them. Now, as we're going to see very quickly, and it's quite shocking when you hear it for the first time, but the reason why you cannot sell a behema daka, a small farm animal, to an idolater, is because they're suspect of using those animals for sexual purposes. They're going to commit acts of bestiality. And once again, that's one of the Shiva mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and you're not allowed to cause a Gentile to sin. So therefore, if the minhag is not to sell it there to them, you cannot sell it to them. And regardless of minhag, you're never allowed to sell an idolater, or really in this context, a non-Jew, any large farm animal, and the examples are calves and donkeys. And it makes no difference whether they're healthy or whether they're in some way they're handicapped. And the reason that Chazal made this gezerah is that if you sell it to them outright and it's not your animal anymore, that's one thing. But if we allow you to sell to them, you may come also to lease to them your animals, and they're going to do malacha with those animals on Shabbos. And therefore the rabbis banned all working farm animals that you cannot even sell to them, and even if they're handicapped, you cannot sell to them. Rabbi Yehuda matir b'shavura. Rabbi Yehuda says if they can't work anymore because they're lame, you could sell to them, because then you don't have to worry about malacha on Shabbos. And Ben Beseira matir b'sus, and Ben Beseira says you're allowed to sell them a horse, because a horse is not a work animal, meaning it's not there to pull a plow, it's there mostly just for riding. And even though you're not allowed to ride a horse on Shabbos, it's only a rabbinical prohibition. There's no malacha being performed. And therefore, it's only an isser derabanan at most, and therefore we're not going to ban you rabbinically from selling them something that's only rabbinically prohibited for them to ride, because that's like a rabbanan on a derabanan. The Gemara now says, Lamemra de isura leka min hagahu deika, heicha denoag isser nohug, heicha denoag heter nohug. It sounds like from the Mishnah that there's no isser selling a behemadaka, a small farm animal, to an idolater, and therefore it's dependent upon the minhag. Where the minhag is not to permit it, we don't permit it. Where the minhag is to permit it, we permit it. So let's raise a contradiction, or a mini. Ein ma'amidin behema bepundako shel ovdei kochavim mipnei shechashudin al haravia. You're not allowed to set up or to sort of display a farm animal in the marketplaces of idolaters, because they're suspect of bestiality. And the question is, if that's the concern, why should it be dependent upon a minhag? If it's asur, it's asur. If there's an isser of lifnei iver, it should always be asur. So Amar Rav, makom shehitiru limkor, hitiru liyached, makom shasu liyached, asur limkor. So Rav explains as follows. Rav says, it's not that every idolater is suspect of bestiality. What the Bryce is essentially saying is that it all depends upon the cultural mores of that community in which you live. There are some cultures where it's completely acceptable, an acceptable norm, like in
sexual practice.
Yeah, like in certain Arab cultures, even to this day, it's considered completely the norm. It's acceptable. We know this for a fact, right? And in other cultures, it's not acceptable. And therefore, when the Bryce says that you're not allowed to set up an animal in the bazaar of the idolaters, it's only where they're suspect. And there, you cannot set it up because they may seclude themselves with the animal temporarily, and they're going to cause them to sin. So therefore, makom shehitiru limkor hitiru liyachid. If it's permissible to sell, it's because it's permissible to seclude. The Gentile can seclude himself with the animal because he's not suspect of bestiality. Makom shas liyachid. But when they said that you can't allow the goy to seclude himself with the animal, you cannot sell it to him because we assume he's going to use it for bestiality purposes. So therefore, it depends on the type of idolater. But Rabbi Lazar Omer, af b'makom sha'asu liyached muter limkor. Rabbi Lazar says, I disagree. Rabbi Lazar says, no. What we mean to say is that it's totally in the minhag hamakom. Why? Because all idolaters are suspect of bestiality. But nonetheless, it's only dependent on the minhag of whether we permit you to sell it to them or not. Because the only time that an idolater is suspect of committing acts of bestiality is when the animal doesn't belong to him. Because once he purchases the animal, he's going to be more protective over the health of the animal. And my time, because an idolater is concerned about his financial investment. The reason why he won't mount his own animal is because there's an understanding that Rashi says is that once a human is with an animal, he can render the animal sterile. And he doesn't want to do that. He wants the animal to be productive and to be able to reproduce. So therefore, there's an assumption that if he purchases the animal, he's not a suspect on bestiality. But if it's the Jew's animal, then all idolaters are suspect that they can't seclude themselves. And therefore, he learns the brisa that says that you cannot set it up in the bazaar of idolaters. That's all idolaters, regardless of culture, because as long as it's the Jew's animal, all idolaters are suspect of bestiality. As far as selling, you're allowed to sell because once they purchase it, they're not automatically suspect. And therefore, it's dependent upon the minhag. Some places have a minhag not to sell because even when they buy it, they may end up doing something. And other places say it's perfectly fine. Va'af Rav Hodarbe, the Amar of Tachlif Amar of Shila Bar Avim Mishmei the Rav Obikal Chavim Chasal Behemto Shalote Oker. And we even have evidence that Rav himself retracted his original position, and agrees with Rabbi Lazar that there's a difference between allowing a Gentile to seclude himself with the animal that belongs to a Jew versus allowing a Gentile to purchase an animal for himself, and because once it becomes his, he's less suspect on bestiality because he doesn't want to lose his investment, because Rab said those exact same words. So therefore, that seems to be the final position of the Gemara, that technically it's permitted to sell the animal to a Gentile, because once he owns it, he's not as suspect on bestiality, and therefore it depends on the minhag hamaka. We'll hold it here for today. Have a wonderful